Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle EBS Financials Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And with me today I have Victor, who is also a senior consultant. And today we are handling payables lesson 9. And Victor, please walk us through.
Thank you, Bob, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to this payables lesson in our Oracle Financials Functional Training Series. In this lesson, we are going to look at supplier creation, and hopefully we're also going to start looking at invoices. So we already looked at suppliers in our previous session, and we said that when we create a supplier, the supplier becomes visible to all operating units, but the supplier site is specific to the operating unit within which it was defined. Okay. This is the navigation to create suppliers, and this is what we are talking about. When we create a supplier, it becomes visible to all the operating units. Okay, but the supplier sites are specific to the operating unit. Now, just a small let's talk about how we are going to go about creating our supplier. Okay, so once we go to that navigation, we are going to go and we are going to click on the option to create supplier, where we are going to enter the supplier name. There are also other details which we can enter there, but they are not mandatory. When you're creating the supplier, just the supplier name to start with is enough. Okay. And then now there are two ways from there on how we can create a supplier site. Okay, we can create the site, and then we can indicate what kind of site it is, a pay site or a purchasing site or an RFQ site, RFQ only. And then we can assign an address to that site. Okay. However, the other way is that after we create the supplier, we can create an address under that supplier. All right. And when we are creating that address, Oracle gives you the option of adding a site to that address. Okay. So you are creating an address. You remember, like the way we create locations. For instance, the way we created a location for our Maskani legal entities. Okay. So in the same way, we can create an address under this supplier. And then as we are creating it, Oracle asks you whether you want to attach a site to that particular address. If you say yes, then you can indicate what kind of site it is going to be, whether it's a pay site or an RFQ site. And then after finishing, then you'll be asked to attach the site to an operating unit. Okay. So we are going to follow this second method, which is whereby we go and create the address. And then after we create the address, we also say that we want to have a site at that address, select the kind of site it is, and then we are going to associate that site with our operating unit. So let's head on over using this navigation, and we are using our payables manager responsibility. Okay, I'm going to log in. Then I'm going to go to suppliers, then entry. And it opens up as this web page. So you have the option to search if you already have a supplier created. But since we do not, then we can go to this create supplier button. Okay, so we are creating a supplier on this page, and as you can see, we have this indicator here that says the asterisk indicates required field, and you can see that the only field with an asterisk is the organization name. Okay, so we are creating the supplier. Once we create the supplier is going to be visible by all operating units. Okay, we have also other information here that you can enter for the supplier, such as the country of origin, tax registration number, taxpayer ID. You even have the URL if they have a website. We have a DUNS number, which is a Dun and Bradstreet number, which is usually assigned to organizations that are entering contracts with the U.S. federal government. So if the company for which you are doing the implementation is such an organization, then they can enter the DUNS number. And you have all these fields which you can enter, but as you can see, the only required field is the organization name. So we are going to create a supplier which we can call, we create for Maskani, so we can say maybe Jengo construction materials. Okay, maybe that's the name of the supplier we want to create. Since we don't have to enter anything else here, we're just going to apply. So once you do that, then the supplier number is given. Remember, we marked that the supplier from the payables setup, system setups, we said that the supplier number will be generated automatically, so it's been given. And we also have this registry ID. Okay. We don't have any supplier sites yet defined. All right. So we said the way we are going to do it is we already have the supplier, Mjengo Construction Materials. We can create an address, right? And then we are going to assign that address as a site also. Okay. So you can also see that when you have a site name and then it's associated with an operating unit. Okay. So just to emphasize what you are saying, that the supply site is the one that's specific to operating units. Okay. Anyway, so let's create an address, and the way we are going to do it is we click on this address book button. You can search here by entering the address name if you have one, but we don't have one and we want to create a new one. So select create. So these are the details that you're supposed to enter. Address line, we can create, we can enter something here. Maybe let's say 250 Brown Street. I'm just creating one. We can say maybe this is in Jacksonville. I'm going to come up with a county also, just call it Jacksonville. You can say this is in Florida. Postal code 91005. I'm just making up these numbers. Address name, you can call this Mjengo Jacksonville. Okay. So you can see we have entered these details. Okay. On this end here, you also have address purpose. Okay. And under address purpose, you have purchasing, payment, and RFQ only. So if you're going to make this a site, then you have to indicate the purpose. Since we are using payables, then we make this a payment site. Okay, these are other details where you can, which you can enter for this site, right? So we can select continue. The address elements are not validated. We can just press continue to accept. So this is our new site, okay, and it's a payment site. We have the supplier name under which it falls, the supplier number. Then you have to associate the site name with an operating unit. Okay. So yes, we want to associate it with our Maskani developers operating unit since we are logged in as this responsibility. So select that and apply. Okay. So you can see now Mjengo Jacksonville has been added to the address book for Mjengo Construction Materials. So under Mjengo Construction Materials address book, we have this, and it is a payment site. If you want to make updates to this, you can come here. Maybe if you want to update it to also a purchasing site, you can do that. If you want to add any of these other details, you can do that. But for now, that should be enough. So we have created our first supplier, and we have created our first supplier site. So now since we have a supplier, and our payables module is all set, it means we can start entering transactions, we can start entering invoices and issuing out payments. So now the next thing we are going to talk about is invoices. Okay. So before I even start talking about invoices in the system, let's look at a sample invoices that I just pulled up from the internet. Okay, so on this invoice, you can see the person who has been sent the invoice, the person who owes the money. Okay, so that's the address. Okay. Now, if this invoice is maybe associated with a particular purchase order, then you'll have the purchase order number here. All right. You also have the invoice date. Okay. And other details here, such as the order date and date wanted and shipping date. These are maybe details specific to the way these guys generate their invoices. The other thing you can see on this invoice is payment terms. So here it says 110 net 30. We're going to talk about payment terms. So for instance, this means that this amount is due within 30 days, but if you pay within 30 days, you get a discount of 1% of the total. Okay. So, and for this invoice, you have other details such as the salesperson and all these details about shipping. Okay. And then after that, you have the particulars, which are the lines. So showing all the items. These are part numbers. This looks like maybe some parts which are going to be installed or are being used for something, since this is an engineering company. So you have the lines, you have information such as the quantity ordered, and the price and the unit price. Okay, so that's a basic that's an invoice and what maybe a basic invoice would look like. All right. So now when we come to the system, we have a hierarchy for invoices, and this is what the hierarchy looks like. All right. At the very top, we have a batch. All right. A batch will contain one or more invoices. Okay. And then an invoice will contain one or more lines. All right. For instance, invoice 2 has one line, but invoice 1 has two lines. And then finally, the line will have distributions, and the distributions can be one or more. So line B of invoice 1 has two distributions, but line A has one, and for invoice 2, it has one line and one distribution. Okay. So that is the hierarchy of how you enter invoices in the invoice workbench for the Oracle payables. Now let's go back and look at this invoice that we have. Okay. So we can't, of course, see batches here. We only have one simple invoice. All right. So now, assuming we start from here, let's say this is invoice 1. Okay. So this is the invoice we are looking at. We have all these invoice details, which are usually entered at the header part of the invoice, and which you are going to see. And then we have the lines. Okay. So this invoice has 9 lines. Okay. So as you can see here, we can have an invoice that has one or more lines. Okay. So those are the lines, each of these part numbers. All right. So now what are the distributions? Because we have the lines on the invoice, and what are the distributions? So distributions, what we usually enter there is the GL accounts. Okay. GL account numbers. So let's give an example. Okay. So for instance, we have this line B, which has two distributions. Okay. So using the example of this invoice, let's say for this company's GL, so let's take an example of this part number 3. We have 100 units that were ordered. Okay. However, maybe there are two kinds of this part. Okay. They have shipped 100 of them, but maybe there's 50 of them which are blue and 50 of them which are red. All right. Now, supposing this Wayne Engineering in their Oracle, if they're using Oracle, they have separate accounts for the blue parts and the red parts. Okay. But the supplier in the invoice has just set them as one part number, because the part number is the same, but maybe according to Wayne Engineering, then they treat them as the blue ones and the red ones are treated separately. So they have their own account numbers. So this is where distributions would come in. Okay. So for example, you'll have that line with you'll enter the line information there. And then under the distributions, for the red ones, you'll enter them. Maybe the account is 5,000. And then for the blue ones, the account is 5,001. So that's the distributions. Okay. So if you have a situation such as that, then you have to go to the distribution screen and split them up according to those accounts, if they are using separate accounts. But anyway, if all the items in the lines, they are going to one single account, then you don't have to go to the distribution screen. Once you just enter the distribution account at the line level, then it's defaulted down to the distribution, and you have one distribution. Okay. So at the invoice level in Oracle is where we enter the details such as the trading partner, the supplier name. If there's a purchase order number, then you put it there. You have things such as the payment terms, right, and the invoice date and the due date. So, and then at the line level, you'll enter things such as this, if it's stuff like part numbers, and then if you have distributions, then you will enter those account numbers. So this is the hierarchy for the invoices in payables when you're entering them. Now, at every level, there's some details that you have to enter. So, for example, at the batch level, when you're creating a new batch, you have to, of course, give the batch a name. And then you have these two other features which you can use, which is the control total and the control count. So the control total, basically it controls the number of invoices that you're going to enter under that batch. Okay. Control count, on the other hand, it controls the invoice amounts that you're going to enter under that batch. So if you want if you know all the invoices that you're entering under that batch are going to add up to $1,000, then you can enter the control total. Okay. Sorry, I don't know whether I gave the description switched. So control total is for amount, and control count is for the number of invoices. So this is monetary amount, and this is number of invoices under the batch. Okay. So if you know all the invoices add up to $1,000, you can enter the control total as 1,000, and then after you're finished entering the invoices, the invoice amounts, invoice total will be matched with the control total to see whether they are the same. And then control count, if the batch contains 10, you can enter 10 at the control count field, and then once you enter all your invoices, it will compare to see whether the count matches with what you entered here. I mean, this can be used by the users who are entering these invoices, just to avoid like errors in entry. Maybe they know that the invoices are supposed to add up to a certain amount, so they can use this feature so that if the system compares the final amount that they have entered with the amount that they entered as the control total, and there's a discrepancy, then they will know and they can make the changes. Okay, so those are the features that you enter at the batch level, batch information. So something else about batches in payables, in order to use batches, you have to enter the value yes under this profile option, AP use invoice batch controls. So in AP, it's either you're using batches or you're not. All right. So if you want to use batches, then you have to enter the value of yes under this profile option. And once you do, then you have to create batches for every invoices you enter. Okay. So even if you have one invoice, you create a batch, then you put that one invoice in that batch. If this value is set to no, then you can't use batches at all. So that's just a thing to note about batches. So now we go to the next level, which is the invoice. So we have done the batch. Now we want to deal with the invoice. What do we enter at the invoice? Even by looking at that sample invoice that we had, you can see some of the information here. So when they're entering invoices, the clerks who are using these payables, okay, they're basically having a document such as this, okay, and then now they are reading off those details of this invoice that have been sent by the supplier, and then they're entering them in the system, okay. So some of the fields that they'll have to fill out are invoice type. We have various types of invoices. A standard invoice, which you're going to be using most of the time. Then we have credit and debit memos, which are usually adjustments to normal invoices. Like if you want to change the amount, if the amount of the invoice sent was incorrect, then you can enter a memo. and we'll see the difference between a credit memo and a debit memo. Then we have prepayments, and we also have expense reports, which are like things you're billed by employees. They create expense reports, which are basically just invoices, only they come from your own employees. So you can select the invoice type there. You also select the supplier site. Maybe if you're dealing with a you're dealing with multiple with a supplier and there are multiple sites there, so you can select the supplier. You also enter the invoice number, which you are reading off the invoice document that you have. Then you have to enter the invoice amount. You also have the invoice date, which is recorded on the invoice. And then we have the general ledger date. So the invoice date is the one that's written there on the invoice. Such as here, you can see the date for this invoice is 23rd of May, whichever year. GL ledger date is the date where the accounting for this invoice is being recorded in the GL. Okay. So maybe if these goods were received for this invoice were received like 3 months ago, but you're only receiving the invoice now, then we can say that we can have the GL ledger date for that particular date 3 months ago, but then the invoice date is the one that's showing on the invoice. Payment method is something we select also when we're entering the invoice. Examples of payment methods are check. We also have electronic funds transfer, EFT. We are going to see how to define a payment method. You have to define your own payment, a default payment method before you start entering invoices. And then payment terms, as you have seen on the invoice. For example, the invoice that we were looking at, the payment terms there were 1, 10, net 30. So these payment terms are also, you have to create them in the system and add them, okay? So that you can select from them when you're entering the invoice. So this is not something that comes automatically. You have to enter this payment terms and you have to create them first. Then you pick them out of a list. So those are the invoice features. In the lines, what we enter is just, we can enter details such as the ones we have seen here on this invoice, whatever it is, maybe the quantity of those items. And then we can enter the description. Here maybe we can, you have the description and the part number. And then if you have one distribution, you can also enter the distribution account at the line level. Okay. But if you have more than one distribution, then you go to the distributions window, which is a button you click. And then you go and enter the account numbers, all right, and the amounts. So that's a good introduction to invoices. We are going to continue from there, whereby we have to create some of the things we've talked about, such as the payment terms and the payment method. Before now, we can start entering invoices in our payables module. But Bob, unless you have something to add, that's a good place to stop this lesson.
Thank you.
Thank you.